now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
Hey, this band.
on Spoiled Rotten. And surprise, we tricked you.
Yeah.
Our good friend James is back, and not to talk about Men in Black 3 yet. This is, we want to talk to him about some Superman stuff.
Yeah.
I like you threw in yet.
Yes.
What's happening?
It's because it's going to happen.
Is that just not this episode?
Yeah.
But I do want to say, I feel like one thing I know is you feel a way about Man of Steel. And I just really wanted to, get to the heart of it. Also, you mentioned you hated Bucky in Thunderbolts. So there's a lot to talk about.
There's a lot to unpack.
Including our revisit of All-Star Superman from 2011. I think I told you 2010, but you probably knew better.
It's okay. I'll say this. When I was in my younger days, like when I was in my my young nerd days and into my early 20s, I would have chastised you and gave you a tongue lashing for being incorrect. As I have become an older statesman in the nerd scenario, I honestly just don't give a fuck anymore. I don't care if you like something, if you hate something.
Yeah,
when something came out.
It doesn't matter. Like, just enjoy your thing, whatever that is. Now, that doesn't mean I still might not think it's stupid. I'm just not going to chastise you about it. Is what I'm getting at. So, it's because honestly, why?
Yeah,
right. Like, what's the win here? There's no win.
Well, I like how you pointed out that it's a younger self thing, because that was my thing with Star Wars as well. Like, like anyone I dated, I'm like, okay, we have to watch Star Wars, because surprise, none of them did. And now I'm like, I don't care. I don't care if you think it's a crappiest movie. I just am at the point where I think you are, but I use the term embrace your cringe. Because at least that way you're being authentic, you're being yourself, and you just like the stuff you like. I don't like the people that go like, oh, this is my guilty pleasure. I'm like, you're a bunch of cowards. You just like it. All right? Just like it. All right?
That's like, I would say I would only slightly put on my argumentative hat to take slight umbrage with embrace your cringe, only because I don't think of it
a bit like guilty pleasure. You just
it is
who you are.
Like just love what you love.
Yeah.
No, I like saying it because it's just, I like the word cringe. I think it's so much fun, and it's just the idea that I know it makes someone else cringe, and that's what it is. I'm like, no, I'm that's my ick to enjoy and wear as a shield of armor.
You know what, Ben? as the elder statesman between the three of us on this show right now, and representing the elder nerds, I will give you your pass on using cringe. It is acceptable. You have go forth, young lad, and enjoy.
Thank you. But I resent you putting me into the young groups, because this is the oldest I've ever been. So that's not fair.
You did it, man. You made it. Okay. It sounds like a joke, but I do want to know your thoughts on Bucky and Thunderbolts before we continue.
Yeah. Out of curiosity. No chastising.
Okay. First, to be clear to anybody who's listening who is going to misconstrue some of the things I am eventually going to say, I want to make it very abundantly clear that I love the movie Thunderbolts.
I figured you did.
I love the movie. I love a lot of the movie. I love like 98% of the movie.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I love it. I think Yelena's amazing in it. I think Red Guardian is just Red Guardian. Okay. I know there's some obvious comparisons here, but Red Guardian in this is either, like, pick your poison, is either Groot or Drax from Guardians.
Yes.
That's in
like
the humor.
Likable.
Yeah, and just humorous, and you just enjoy what he's doing. And that's I love that. That's super cool. I love the movie because it actually made me not hate John Walker, which is like, hats off.
Yeah, they did it.
And and I like Bob, right? Just because
Yep.
I like Bob, right? Like
I
Lewis
wasn't
Pullman does,
expecting to like Bob either.
yeah,
but
like
I
Lewis
like
Pullman
Bob.
does a great job,
Mhm.
like Bob. Now, for that 2%
Here we
Is
go.
it all
that
Bucky?
I do not like is all 100% Bucky,
Yeah.
and it's not Sebastian Stan that I don't like, and it's
You don't
not
like his deployment in this movie.
I don't. It's not that I don't like Bucky. I love Bucky in all the other movies.
Mhm.
I look at Thunderbolts, and why is he there?
I think
Think about it. What does he add to this movie that if you were to take him whole stock out of it, the film would suffer? I tell you right now, I'd make the argument it doesn't. He
so
doesn't.
It doesn't suffer. But what I like about him being there, as a movie I'm not. I've seen other people who deal with some of the things they're kind of meta commenting on in this feel not so happy about the movie. And that's their experience. I'm not going to say they're wrong for that. There's no grounds for me to do that. But as someone who doesn't feel as directly impacted by some of the more clinical elements of it, and just someone who might feel depressed sometimes or feel some of those things.
Yeah.
I
100%.
appreciated that he was a character that we saw work through those things over time. And even though it's not directly explicitly stated, he can lead them through some of that as someone we already watched work through some of the feelings they had.
And I would 100% agree with you, Daniel, if that's what we saw in the film. But we don't see that in the film, and that's where I chafe, because I don't see him adding anything to the film, and I don't see him adding what you're specifically referring to, because I agree with you. He's the perfect character for that.
Yes.
But there's no
it's
like
not explicitly stated, and I don't think there's a scene I can point to where I'm like, see, this is where they were hinting. It just felt like it made sense for him to be there for that external reason that's not explicitly in the movie.
Right. And to be fair, maybe there are scenes that we have never seen because they were on the cutting room floor. They didn't make for time. Like there's a lot of potential options in that. And I get that. But I'm just saying, with the three of us here and anybody who's listening, for me personally, every time he came onto screen, it took me back out of it, because I wanted more Yelena. I wanted more Bob. I wanted, honestly, as I said in our own review, where I talked a lot, like to the point where I think Andrew wanted to punch me. We got so little Ghost.
Yeah.
And I think that's at a detriment because of any time they spent on Bucky. Because if you take any of the Bucky time away, you could have added it back into Ghost and do a little bit more with Ghost. And having heard about some of the changes and stuff like that, like I don't hate them. Like, because in the either the first or second early drafts of the script, John Walker was the villain.
Yeah.
Bob wasn't in it.
Like a Red Hulk type thing with him.
Yeah, and it was like this whole thing, and there was more with Ghost and Yelena, and Ghost and Taskmaster. There was like a whole thing between the two of them, because that character is more expanded upon in the movie. That's another thing. Like there could have been more. There could have been more. But
and you think Bucky took away from it, which is fair. I said, I agree with you that if you took him out, it wouldn't hurt the movie.
No, but you're right. It absolutely wouldn't. I'm just looking at this from like the meta people, where it's like, okay, we got Secret Wars coming out, we got Doomsday. He's got to be a part of one of the factions that they're seemingly putting together, and I think that's kind of why they did it. Plus, to Daniel's point, yes, like his trauma and all that it fits very, very well. But you're right, it pulls screen time away.
I only ever liked it as a continuation of the trauma thing, because as a setup for Secret Wars and Doomsday, I'm like, why the fuck would he not be on the Sam Wilson team?
Right?
If we're looking forward, I'm not into that. When he was like, I tried to talk to Sam, it didn't work. I was like, well, that sucks. I wish, I wish it did work out. Well,
because like you think about it, like, and even if you look at Captain America, Brave New World. When you look at that film, he had that really great speech near the end. And that's about it, right? He was wasted in that. And So like it's
Not
now
in
two.
I wanted them to say they love each other, and he said he loves Sam. It was not a waste for me. It was everything I wanted.
Okay. That, you know what? Fair play. But in this film,
I mean, yeah, I can't defend it. I didn't even come into this looking to defend it because I just didn't even know it was an option to hate him in it. And now I'm glad I've heard what you've had to say, because it's true. It wouldn't hurt the movie if you took him out.
And that, and to me, that is the biggest injustice to his character, because he has been such a big part of the MCU and, you know, like the entire fabric of that universe for, you know, a long
he's been
time.
There since 2011, and that number I do have right.
Right.
Captain America: First Avenger.
But you know what I mean? Like, exactly. Like it's he's there, he's mattered, and seeing the journey that he's gone through, it's really unfortunate that they didn't take the time. If they're going to have him in there, I would have liked to have had his scenes at least have, like, to your point, Daniel, you know, like have a couple moments where it's more like, I understand subtlety and subtext is important, but I didn't feel like there was any of that even hinting at it.
And I fully agree that that's not really there.
And if that had been there at least to some point, or if I missed it and somebody said, "Oh, well, what about these scenes?" and I'd be like, "Oh, okay, I just missed that in the moment, or my rage was taking over and I couldn't see it." Fair play, but I still don't see that being any different as I go forward. But the film itself is amazing, and I think it's probably one of the better MCU films overall.
It's definitely in my top 10 at the moment.
So there is something that's coming up for me that does shut down a lot of the points that you just brought up, and how pivotal Bucky was in flipping Mel on what's her, Vanessa DeFontaine's team. Val's thing. Like that to me was like the biggest reason why.
I mean, but
Bucky,
if you think about it, she's still working for Val at the end, and she helped her at the end.
Yes, absolutely. But it's the whole point is that she was feeding him intel, so he knew where to go and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, that's, to me, the only thing that is like, okay, that's why Bucky's there. But you could have done that with another character.
Those spies couldn't have pieced it together.
Well, they just weren't, because the problem was
over a day. I don't think you could honestly say they had enough time to not.
They didn't have enough time. The hood was pulled over them, right? It was just like, oh, we were sent to kill each other. We were being so like that. To me, is like, okay, that justifies Bucky coming in. I think there's a version of this movie that runs much longer where, and they did say that they dumped, when they went into the void, that they did shoot scenes for a lot more of the trauma rooms, so to speak, or the shame rooms, and I'm that sure Bucky was one of them, but it was just at the point where the runtime and how that would have stopped, and how the main focus for this movie clearly was Yelena and how she was pulling the whole movie forward. And I think that is contributing to a lot of the points that you bring to the table, and the fact that because we'd seen Bucky so many times, that I'm pretty sure the directors or Foggy at some point was like, yeah, they know him. Like, let's focus on these people.
Yeah, and to your point, if they had done some of those rooms with Bucky, I would have been I might even been more angry about doing them, because we've seen so much of his stuff.
I don't know what that we don't do for him.
But I would have been okay with if they had done it in more of the sense that he was going through and helping them through the rooms.
Yeah.
Yep.
As a guide almost, because I've gone through my pain. That would have been maybe something, and I would have maybe brought down the heat. But as it stands with the film that we got, the heat is high. We got high Scoville levels.
I'm really glad to ask, because it's not something I ever considered.
It's not something I considered at all.
No, and honestly, not a lot of people are. I seem to be a singular voice in this, you know, like.
But it's an important
voice. People I follow mad at Bucky, but I think it's more as it relates to him working with John Walker after the events of Falcon, which I think is more of a joke than people are willing to let. I think they're just like, hey man, you should have stood by your black friend and not worked with the cop. But I think in general, what you said feels more genuine and actually thought provoking.
Yeah, it's just that's how I came out of it, and I haven't backed down on it. Now that might change. Like if you come back to me like a year from now and I've seen the film a few more times, and you know, maybe at that point I'll have softened the edges a little bit.
You'll just be happy you saw him again.
Maybe, It's hard to say. I just like, again, it's disappointments. That's
I
all.
honestly don't even want you to change your mind. I think it's a very, I think it's like a perfectly good hill to die on.
It's a good hot take. I like it. I like it a
I
lot.
just, yeah, it's just sometimes you guys have been through it. You go watch a movie and you're the one person that has that one thought, and it's just,
yeah.
and you're on an island by yourself. Another one of
Yes.
those is the Blair Witch. I am on an island all by myself with that. So
I have
not
that
liking it.
same thing for Shang-Chi
Oh.
as well. Like, I don't hate it. I think it's a good movie at the end of the day, but there's like little bits where I'm like, from a meta movie making standpoint, like Asians in film, that I'm like,
okay.
oh, you did it again. And like, nobody seems to be on my island with it, including other Asians. They're like, what are you talking about, man? We got a male lead in the MCU. Like, what more do you want? I'm like, I'm telling you what I want.
No, and that, again, and that goes back to, like, except like, I obviously not Asian, so I don't have like those viewpoints, right? Like, I don't have those. I've got a blinder towards some of that.
Yes.
What that means, right? So when I hear people say things like that, I just kind of go, okay, whether I agree or not.
Yeah, you have to take it at face value at that point.
I have to just pull it in and just go, that's something I need to consider, because I am not that, whatever that might be, whether it's Asian, Black, it could be, gay, Hispanic, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If since I'm none of those things, I need to hear it and accept it for what it is, just because it's an opinion. Let's just, let's live with that. And to go back to the point, Daniel, yes, I absolutely, Blair Witch Project is in my top 5 worst films ever made in the history of cinema.
I don't like it, but I also just felt like in the moment, I didn't think I didn't understand it, but the way people love it, I'm like, oh, I guess I didn't understand it, because it felt not good to me. And I think The Game is a movie like that for me, where I'm like, I feel like he said what was going to happen, and then what he said was going to happen happened, and everyone still thinks it's this great movie full of twists.
Bro, The Blair Witch is right in that same group with Fight Club.
Okay.
And what's Jesus, what's it called? Crap, I'm forgetting the name of it now. It's the one with Memento.
Okay.
People get, I find they see the like, not to take your game reference here, because I'm not referring to the game, because I have to be fair, I can't comment on the game because I haven't seen it in like 25 years. So
yeah.
I might be on your island with you on that one, but I'm just getting at is a lot these films come off as really, really smart and intellectual when you're 18.
I was gonna say,
yes.
I mean, I think I saw Memento when I was like 13, 14, so I was like, holy shit. But I think you got to be a bit younger to be impressed by Memento that way, and then you can enjoy performances and structure at an older age. But I think the wow factor comes at a younger age.
Well, and for, like, I get, okay, I not to be a self-righteous snob, but I have seen an insane number of films in my life. At this point now, I have a rough estimate of around 7,000 films that I have seen.
Nice.
And which I remember having a conversation with somebody once. I threw that number out there. They're like, "There's no way," and I was like, "Dude, that," because like, if you do the math, it's not hard.
No,
it's not.
It is so not hard to do it. And when I was young, I used to watch, like, it was stupid the amount of movies I used to watch. Like, I used to watch like 10 to 20 movies a week, right? Like, bare minimum.
Watch a lot. I used to be like, oh, I'm gonna have a meal, I should probably watch a movie.
Right now, not as much these days because things are different. But that's back then. But so like, for going, like, not to go too deep in the weeds on Blair Witch, but like for Blair Witch and some of these other films, these are not brand new techniques.
Right.
These are not groundbreaking ideas. Like, I also will die on the hill that I think Citizen Kane is a very boring movie.
No,
one of the most important films in the entire history of cinema. And I understand why it's important and why some people love it more than others. I accept all of that. For me, I'm like, it's all right.
I think I would imagine just saying what happens in the movie is not exciting. I do think it for me it is the craft. So I'm not trying to disprove your point. I'm just trying
Right.
to say I think for me the craft is what makes it so cool to me.
And I like, what I would say about this is when I hear people say when they like, oh well, this film that came out like whatever like a month ago is copying this film I saw when I was 13 in like 2000. And I'm like, yeah, but that's the film that was copying the film that came out in 1980, that was copying the film that came out in 1960, that cribbed notes from about 4 other films that came out in the 30s.
Yep.
So like,
everything's a copy of a copy.
Yeah,
right?
it's just like what makes it different is the person or the people making it, not necessarily the idea.
Yes.
Yeah. I also, as a young kid, I got taught a very valuable lesson when I was about 15 years old. I went to my uncle, who is a big music fan. Like, he loves music. He's been to hundreds of concerts. He's been collecting vinyl his entire life. Just loves music. And I went to him stupidly one day and started talking to him about the Clash, right? As if I just discovered them. Like, I'm the first guy who's ever heard the band.
Nice.
And then I'm talking to him, and then my uncle looks at me, and he's just like, "The fuck you talking about?" Right? And I was like, "The Clash, yada yada yada." And he was like, "Don't talk to me about the Clash." And he goes, "I saw them in Greece." Like, what the fuck? What do you know? Right? Because he legit saw them live. It was like 1980, 81 or something like that. He flew to Greece with some friends, and they went and saw.
Oh, that's amazing.
Saw the Clash and a bunch of other bands, right? Like, obviously, it was one of those big festival type ideas. And I was just like, and I felt like this big. Like, I felt like I'm never talking to you about music again. But that lesson is also, I never forget it, because I remember it today when somebody comes up to me, like a young kid, like my friends' kids or anybody that comes up and they start talking about like this cool show or this movie or whatever that they're seeing. And I'm like, yeah, I've watched it like 8,000 times. Yeah, I love it. Whatever, right? Like, if somebody talks to me about Star Wars, it's like, yeah, man, you enjoy it. That's like awesome.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm excited for you. You can enjoy that now.
Yeah. Like, you're on the team. You've come to the island. You've got on the boat.
That's right.
You came over. We're hanging at this island now, and that's super cool. But enough of all of that. We should talk about something that is super cool that we want to talk about.
So I want to be, I know we will get to
we're
revisiting All-Star Superman, but
yes,
the next thing we have to do, I don't even remember how I put it to. I think your top 5 Superman performances, but I also said like, hey, if you want to use like a comic storyline, you can use that as well. But
yeah, so I do have, as I said, I had almost forgotten, and I do have some entries, and I had some entries. 3. I had entries like almost instantaneously. Okay. Now, I will say that the some of these ones are like, most of these early ones are performances.
Okay.
But even more so, to get so micro about it, is that some of these things are literally 10 seconds long.
I knew you wouldn't disappoint. Thank you very much for this. I'm
okay.
already excited.
So, I'm going to get into, I'll start off with, I will talk about comics a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, some of my favorite Superman stories, Superman Birthright.
Okay.
It's really good retelling and massaging of his origin and his character. I really like that one. We're going to talk about All-Star Superman as the film, but that's a really great book as well. Probably one of my all-time favorite Superman stories that isn't All-Star Superman or Birthright is a bit of a cheat, but I don't care, and that is Kingdom Come.
Okay.
Because I remember the first time I read it, which was well after it had come out, and I got to read it, and it had been a while since I've been into comics, and I read the book, and that when I opened it up, right, I had a bit of a moment, because it was the forward to it is a dedication to Christopher Reeve.
Oh, okay, that would be emotional.
And it was after his passing. And I'm reading it, and it just hit me in the feels, right? Because it's just it's really simple. it's to paraphrase, because I can't remember the exact wording for the first part of it. It's like either 2 or 4 Christopher Reeve.
Okay.
For making me believe a man can fly.
Nice.
Which, you know, if anybody who is familiar with the old Christopher Reeve movie, that is the tagline for the film. Will make you believe a man can fly. And it's one of my favorite films of all time. I love the original Superman movie with Christopher Reeve. And so, yeah, so Kingdom Come won me over just with that. Right, and then I read the story and I was like, this is amazing. I love this idea of this old, bitter Superman who isn't really old and bitter, but he becomes even more old and bitter throughout the story as it goes. And then he basically becomes the fascist that everybody thinks about with Batman.
Yeah.
But then takes that idea and just goes, turn it to 11. I really like that story. I like it for multiple reasons because of how they play with that mythos. Those are really good ones. I like one of my favorite Superman non-Superman stories is the Lex Luthor miniseries written by Brian Azzarello. Love that because it's seeing Superman from Lex's point of view,
which I always like.
Yeah, yes. And it's fascinating to see it from that. Some of the best Lex Luthor depictions in Superman, no matter what the genre is when Lex is confronted with the truth of Superman. And he just and I'll get into a little bit of it when we talk about All-Star Superman.
I wish you put that last so we could, because it's like
we're definitely gonna get into that.
Superman.
Yeah, because there's a thing in there, so it's part of it. But that dovetails into some of my performance stuff. Okay. So I've got I couldn't remember, like I was thinking about say a Smallville and things like that, which I love Smallville.
Okay.
I really like Smallville. I think it's a pretty good, if you're willing to just suspend yourself from all of the mythos, which I think is the key for every franchise.
Yeah.
You got to
it's got what they want to talk about.
And as a comic fan, I've learned this over the years. You can love what you love, but when you read a new story, just accept it for what it is. Or if you really feel bitter about it, just think, oh, it's Elseworlds.
Yeah.
Done. I'm out. It's easy peasy. So I'll take all those ones. I'm going to start off light and easy, light and breezy. This is not 10 seconds, but it's a very short period of time in the film overall. And it's the Brandon Routh's first reveal as Superman, stopping the plane from crashing into the stadium. And I love that entire sequence of just how he flies in, he does the thing, and showing on film what Superman truly is or could be in live action. Seeing him handle that plane, doing all that stuff, I was like, now the rest of that movie, sure.
It's not for me. But I was going to say, not the bullet to the eye, but then when you said it shows what he could really be, I'm like, that is a better representation than a bullet to the eye. Yeah,
I have some other versions specifically about Superman, but that one in particular, a power set situation. I think it's a beautiful opening shot, reintroduction to the character for us and for Metropolis. I think that was really well done. All right, I'm going to switch it up. We're going to go animated next.
Nice.
So, ironically enough, it's the same voice actor both times. And that's just because I'm just a big fan of the I can't even remember his goddamn name right now, but the
Bruce Timm stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce Timm. All the Bruce Timm animation, I am. Yeah, that's my bag. Now, voice number 2, which was George Newbern, was the second Superman because Tim Daly couldn't keep doing it for other obligations. So George Newbern takes over, and he's the predominance of the Bruce Timm Superman voices for a long time. He gets both of these because these are two of my favorite moments. So this one is one line.
Okay.
And it is from Justice League: The Enemy Below, which is season 1, episode 6. And this is the introduction in Justice League of Aquaman and how they're trying to assassinate him, and then they find Deadshot, who is the assassin for Aquaman, and Batman's like, I'll go talk to him, and he grabs him and he drags him away from the team, and he takes him about what's about supposed to be like 50 to 100 feet away from the team, and they're talking, and you don't hear anything, and the shot is of Batman holding Deathstroke, and he picks him and he pulls him forward, and so all you see is Batman talking into Deathstroke's ear, and it's just dead quiet, and all of a sudden you hear Deathstroke, just stop, I'll tell you anything, and he tells the whole plot. Wonder Woman turns to Superman. I wonder what he said. And Superman, like George Newbern does, it's great. He just turns to her and he goes, you don't want to know. And I love it because it told me everything I need about that Superman, because it's like he both understands who Bruce is and accepts him, but also knowing that Bruce isn't going to do those things, but he knows that Bruce might do those things.
Right.
And he needs to be the scary guy, right? I love that one. The second one, George Newbern again. Oh, this is one of my favorite moments of Superman of all time. Justice League Unlimited, episode Destroyer, season 3, episode 13. Superman's fighting Darkseid. And Darkseid's beating him and he's kicking his ass. And then all of a sudden, Superman is like, because Darkseid's talking shit about Batman and all this stuff, right? And then Superman just basically stops and just goes, nah, son. Nah, not having this anymore. And he unleashes on Darkseid. And the whole time he's giving this speech about how, you know what my real problem is I always have to hold back. I have to think about, I might kill somebody. And he's doing this whole thing about what it really means to be Superman.
And he had this memory of that one. Yeah.
And he's just pummeling Darkseid, splits his head. And it's like, it's a whole thing. Now Darkseid fights back, and it's the thing. But in that moment of him just giving that speech about, and he's unleashing fury, which you never see Superman do.
Right.
Like, and thinking about it, I was like, yeah, shit, he really does. Like, if he breathes the wrong way, he could break one of us. Right? Amazing moment. Love that moment. All right, here we go. We're going to go deep into the next two straight up. I'll just tell you right now, they're both Christopher Reeve. Yeah. Everybody just has to get over it. All right.
I mean, I feel like, yeah, Christopher Reeve is a great Superman.
Yeah,
he is. And even though
trying to capture that magic.
Even though I have my Kingdom Come Superman over here, over this way, I have my Christopher Reeve Superman. I have a Christopher Reeve poster right in front of me. Piece of artwork. Anyways, I love Christopher Reeve. So my first one of Christopher Reeve, I could do tons of stuff from Superman 2, which is not the best movie in the world, but it was one of my favorite growing up because I just love it because it's got General Zod. He's fighting other supervillains. It's great. All those things. Like one of my favorites is, when he flies up to the Daily Planet after he gets his powers back, and he's like, would you like to step outside? And I'm like, I love that moment. That's great. All those things are great. Even love the moment at the very end of the film when he goes back to the White House and he puts the flag back on top of the White House. He's like, I'm sorry, Mr. President, I was away for a little bit, but it won't happen again. Right? Like, love all that stuff. That's fun. That's very Superman, especially that kind of jokey era Superman. I love all that stuff. No, my favorite moment from Superman 2 happens after all of that. It's like one of the very last moments in the film. And it's when he goes back to the diner, where when he loses his powers, he gets bullied by a truck driver. And he goes into the diner and he grabs the truck driver, picks him up, puts him down on his tray of food. Like, he spins him around on the thing, and then he puts him on his tray of food, and then he slides him down the end of the counter, and then he falls over into the pinball machine, and it goes on tilt, and and it's just, and he's just like this laying in there, right? Looks hilarious, right? They all look at him like, what the hell just happened? And only Christopher Reeve looks at them, and he's like, I was working out. Fucking love that moment. I love that moment. It's just because it's both humorous, like the funny side of Clark Kent, but also like just that like wholesome way of Superman, but also being humble. And it, like, I'm not going to tell you I'm Superman, of course.
Yeah.
Like that's just, but it was working out. And it's just this, he does this little hand motion, which I think is hilarious. But my number one all-time single moment in any performance of Superman is Christopher Reeve in the first movie. And this is legit, like between the last one and this one of these, like if I just do the line in the last one, that's the shortest. But total moment, like scene, it's when he goes to Lois's apartment for their date, and she's in the bathroom getting ready, and Christopher Reeve does this whole thing where all of a sudden, and this is where I remember, not the first like 30 times I watched the film as a kid, but I remember when I was in like my late teens, early 20s, and I was watching it, and it was just like a fucking light bulb went off in my brain about why Christopher Reeve was such a great actor. Is that you see him on screen turn from Clark Kent into Superman, back to Clark Kent, all in a breath.
Yeah.
And I watched it and I was like, shit, I get it now. I get how you cannot know that he is Superman.
Because I feel like it's also him as an actor using his full instrument. Like you can actually see the effort he's putting into, and I don't mean that in like, oh, look at how hard he's trying. I just mean like he wasn't there just to be like, yeah, whatever, I'm Superman, this is a kid's thing. He obviously had done work and was like, this is the performance I want to put on.
Yeah, he changes his complete physical posture and body movement.
Yes.
The posture of his head all of a sudden just kind of like locks in like this regal Superman type of thing. His voice changes, right? He takes off the glasses, which is obviously part of the disguise thing, right? He does all of those things, and you hear him say, Lois, as Superman. And then she's like, what was that? And then all of a sudden he's like, he chickens out, and he's like, and he hunches the shoulders over and he drops his head down with his neck. And I was just like, God damn it. And every time I watch it now, ever since I realized that when I was younger, every time it gives me goosebumps. I'm like, that's Juilliard right there.
Yeah. It's good physical acting for sure. Yeah. It's good physical acting.
My favorite moment, I was hoping you could say, but I like yours better, it's the moment that made me be like, oh, I like Christopher Reeve as Superman. It's the first movie, and I think Lois Lane tries to trip him or something, and he goes with it. And she's like, oh, sorry. And he's like, oh, of course. You wouldn't intentionally try to make me look bad. Like, right. And I'm just like, I'm glad that he pushes back. I was like, I just liked that he wasn't a doormat. Like, he was just like, no, I'm going to call you out on this. I'm not going to be mean about it, but I'm going to call you out. Like, she knew what that meant.
No, and I think that's part of their relationship where those two characters come off the best, because playing Clark for jokes and that he's a buffoon and like this idea that Kal-El is playing Clark as a character, when I am one of the ones that believes that Clark Kent is the person. Superman is
that's like how he grew up, right? Like it's actually
everything that
John
Clark like everything that Clark does and says and thinks and believes is who he truly is at his core. Superman's got the powers and he's got the nobility and he's got all that stuff. That's fine.
Yeah.
Because he's super invulnerable. He can blow shit up, like whatever, right? Cool. But Clark is where it's at. Whereas Batman is Batman.
Yes.
And Bruce Wayne is the disguise. Clark is the person and Superman is the disguise, as I like to call it, because it's just, he puts it on to do his thing.
So I think the interesting thing about that is I've always seen both sides of Superman as Superman, both Clark and Superman. And the reason why is because I'm like, oh, they're speaking to the immigrant experience where we have to code switch in different kind of places and all that kind of stuff. And I that's what I've always saw Superman as, is like, no, you're just the same guy no matter what. You're just code switching for your different environments, and you're very aware of that. And I'm like, that makes sense to me. That's why I never thought of anything more of Clark Kent. I'm like, no, he's just surviving in a world that would rightfully be like, hey, no, we got to experiment on you or whatever it is, right?
Well, and to that point, it's something that I came to a conclusion about more recently in the last 15 years, is that like even Superman, the way that he's portrayed and written sometimes it can be a little problematic because of to your point about the immigrant experience, about how he has to be the perfect person.
Yeah.
Like all those things. And when I started like watching it through that lens, I was just like, shit, man, that is, yeah, I could see how somebody might have a problem with that interpretation over here. And I was just like, it's, as you get, that's the one thing I will say about getting older. I am not becoming more bitter. I am just becoming more.
I think you're getting older the right way. You're
I hope
up.
so. I fingers crossed. I really, really hope so. I'd like to think that I am. I know I still have lots of work to do on some things, but like, man, I try every day to just, like I said, love what you love, man. Love what you love.
All right. We have to talk about All-Star Superman.
Yeah, I know we've talked about everything else.
We didn't even announce this yet. We're like, this is what we're doing. Did we? Okay.
Yeah, we did.
It's been that long since we started.
I was just
since we started.
loving it.
Yeah, we are going to start our revisit of All-Star Superman.
I will say it's a revisit for probably the both of you. It's the first time around for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. Sure, we could say that.
That's
it is
fair.
A series we do. We do revisiting series.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'll let you guys go first. Ben, we'll go James first. How did you feel revisiting this movie?
I honestly, I will say I liked it so much more this time than the very first time I ever watched it.
Okay.
Because when I first watched it back in the day when it first came out, was not long after me having read All-Star Superman, which I thought was a really great, interesting, brilliant book on its own, because Grant Morrison as a writer is not for everybody, but when he's on, I find he's amazing. And Frank Quietly's art in the original comic is not for everybody.
Yes.
And I will admit, when I first was introduced to Quietly, I wasn't 100%. And sometimes even to this day, I sometimes look at his stuff and I'm like, I don't know if I really love this, but I do. But sometimes I'm like, I get torn, because sometimes I want like the chisel cut design, but Quietly is not like that. It's a little bit bubbly and it's a little, more fluid. But yeah, the original comic was 12 issues and it was set up to be obviously the 12 labors of Superman, but it's Morrison kind of playing on the idea of like the 12 labors of Hercules and, and like things that come out of myth, right? Because Morrison, if you look at any of his stories, it's always, he's going back into history, looking at myths from Earth's past and just pulling those forward and then just putting the veneer of a superhero around it.
He's big on the gods.
Yeah. And that's cool. And I think it works in a lot of cases, like in this case, where you get to see a Superman just coming to grips with, now his own mortality. And in the movie, they cut a lot of that down. And they reformat some of it, and they do, so it's not the same 12 labors, but he still gets the key moments in it. They like Sam Liu and they go through to give the at least the key beats. A lot of the stuff that I would say is important to tell the story. And so watching the movie again, for me personally, I really was enjoying it this time, because I'm now, I'm like 15 years away, almost 20 years away from when the comic came out and when I read it, and having that kind of, viewpoint. I'm watching it now and I'm just like, I just enjoying it for a really fun, great Superman story that does a lot of things really great in it that we will talk about, because one of those things has to do with Lex Luthor, of course.
And Ben,
absolutely.
What about you?
Oh, this is probably my favorite Superman story that I've ever seen. It's the idea of one of the major reasons why I dislike Superman is that he's too overpowered, and I'm never convinced that he's in any actual mortal danger or anything like that. So the stakes to me is always like, okay, he'll figure it out, which is true for literally every other comic book character, except for like those one-off runs where it's like, oh, the death of, and all that kind of stuff. But in this case, it's just like, okay, this is different, where he's facing down the mortality, not from an enemy, but from like his own DNA and how all this kind of stuff. So it's just such a fascinating thing to be like, what are his thoughts, ideas, what's important to him while he's pursuing his final year on Earth. And I think it's such a great story because it really does do such a good job of helping me understand Superman as Superman just by himself. And then also the added thing of Lex and like how diametrically opposed that they both are. And this just helped me understand, and it got me to go in on Superman because I'm just like, this is it's it's the best representation of humanity. And I'm like, wow, it's really cool. Like I get it. It's hope done in a really good way. Like to me, like to have hope while facing down death is hugely courageous, and that rings through in this whole thing for sure.
Guys, guess what?
What?
I'm on an island here, baby. I'm on a big island.
Okay, before you get to that, I just want to say one thing about what Ben said, because you touch on something, Ben, that I think a lot of Superman haters talk about.
Yeah.
Which is that he's overpowered and blah, blah. And I don't disagree. Bad writers handle him that way. The best writers, like Morrison and Mark Waid and a few others, realize that the key to Superman is not about putting him necessarily specifically in mortal danger. It's about having him have to make the Sophie's choice.
Yeah.
And having like the moral dilemma of everything that he does. That's the best Superman stories, you know, and I think that's something that people don't focus in on enough because they just think about, oh, he can, you know, blow up planets or whatever. And it's just like, no, it's because he's that powerful. This is what you got to do.
I think it is the who do you save? Who do you like? Making a choice means that someone else doesn't get your attention in that moment. And what you also touched on, the idea that he has to hold back. So yeah, he's overpowered. So that means he can't interact with the world the way everyone else does. And to see him doing that means that there's a more mental strength there going on. That's interesting. But yeah, I think
I got to hear about this island, man.
Yeah,
what's
movie, going on?
I think the most positive thing I can say about the movie is that it finally made me read the actual comic All-Star Superman, which I liked, but I did not like the movie. So I watched it when it first came out because I was watching all the like DC animated stuff, and I remember just being like, I don't know, this is really boring to me. And then this time I watched it, and I'm like, all right, I understand what they're going for. I should just read this comic because I feel like I'm missing something. And I think, James, you even mentioned it. They do kind of sand down the idea that he's doing these Herculean 12 feats thing, which I do think helps actually structure and format the story they're trying to tell. Because I don't know, the movie just comes off as like a blob of things happening where I'm like, oh, that's a good idea, but nothing for me comes together as a greater than the sum of its some good parts. And which is a shame because I feel like the story, like when you read it in the comics, is very interesting and engaging. So it just feels too watered down from what the story was in the comics for me to fully enjoy it. And I say that with a heavy heart because I can see here Dwayne McDuffie wrote the film adaptation, who did Static and a bunch of other comics, but just like a real bummer that I would say something like that about something he made, but it did not work for me as a movie.
See, and this is where I would only say push back on you a little bit, Daniel, just in this case to say try again in like 10 years, right? Because what you're describing sounds very much like what I went through because I had read the comic so recently, then watched this film, and still had memories. Like I remembered the story, reread it, looking at it, and I was picking it apart, and I didn't like how they sanded it down. Now I'm just watching it for the fun of just watching, you know what is, because you put it, Dwayne McDuffie, a really well-written Superman story. Again, unfortunately, because I think it's only 89 minutes, 78 minutes. Sorry,
it's shorter. Yeah.
This was in that era where they were still doing that. Whereas now Warner Animation, every freaking movie is 2 parts, and it's like, or 4 parts in the case of Crisis, and it was just like, or sort of with 3 parts, whatever, it doesn't matter, multiple parts.
Yeah.
It's just dumb. And look at that Crisis. I watched the Crisis film, and I was like, yeah, this is no good.
Oh,
like, and I don't even like Crisis to start with, but I'm like,
no.
this is a shit poor version of that story anyways. And I'm just like, oh, it's just too much going on. And I'm like, 3 wasn't enough. You probably needed like 12 movies to be able to tell that story properly.
Yeah.
And I look at All Star, and I'm thinking, I don't think you need to do 12, but I think a 2-hour version of this film
would be better. I'll be honest.
Because you could put some stuff back in.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I think I'm at the age where I'm just realizing who my guys are and who my guys are not.
Okay. That's fair.
Daredevil, not my guy. Superman, not my guy. Because I think
you're killing Geek Hard here, man. You're killing.
No, I know.
It's the 2 of us right there. You hit our big hitters.
I wanted to even it out. I didn't want to just do because I think
if you start shitting on Star Wars, man, we're done.
No. You won't hear me shitting on Star Wars. No, I think if I was someone who genuinely loved Superman, I could come back to this movie and enjoy it for the time spent and the homage it pays to the story that I think is better. But I do think that ultimately it's still not, and I'm not saying that it would make it a better objective movie. I don't like criticisms that boil down to it didn't do what I wanted it to do, so it's bad. So that's not what I'm saying, but it did get in the way of me enjoying it because I kept thinking like, oh yeah, like this is just his last moments with these key people in his life, but it doesn't play out that way, even though essentially it is. It felt like it was still just like, and then this happens, and then this happens. And I think that's why I like the comic better, because it is structured around the 12 things, so you don't have to worry about like, oh wait, why is Jimmy weaving in and out of this, or why? Because you were like, it's based on these things that's set up by Atlas and Sampson in the first issue of like, we read it, you're gonna do these 12 things, and so you can enjoy it in that way, in addition to the Lex stuff that is great, and I do think done better in the comic than the movie. Not, and I mean the ending, like where Lex ends. I think they did. We talked about it with The Last of Us. They did a bit too much hand holding in the movie of being like, no, to be clear, Superman calls him out for not really wanting to save the world, and then having Lex be like, oh, you're right. And I'm like, oh no, I just liked it better when it was clear that Superman was right and he didn't agree.
Yeah, no, and it's fair. Listen, one of my, I'm not gonna actually, I can't argue with you about what you were saying, Daniel, about how it kind of like you almost pinball around. It's kind of it feels like you're on an amusement park ride as a child. You're just floating down the river, and you all of a sudden something comes out and like just scares you, and then you move to the next thing that jumps out and scares you. Like that's what it feels like. And I won't disagree with that, because that is something that I did feel when I was watching this. But of course, as we've already discussed, I'm just a big Superman fan, so I was able to just like go turn that part off and just sit back and enjoy the parts that I enjoy, which of course you kind of hit on a little bit, is the Lex stuff.
Yeah. I think that's the strong stuff. Yeah.
And again, like I was saying earlier, some of the best Superman stuff is when Lex, like my favorite Superman stories and scenes and moments is when Lex is confronted with the truth about Clark and Superman. And then watching his brain essentially crack and break at the understanding that they are the same person, and it doesn't make sense to him why he would pretend to be this less than person, as he puts it, and thinks about as with Clark. And like, why would you do that when you are a god? Ostensibly, you are a god. Like, why don't you act like a god? And I've saw like John Cryer does it in the Arrowverse Crisis series when he meets Tom Welling's character and he realizes that they're the same person, and it's like, and his brain kind of snaps and breaks, and then he's like, why would you do it? And then he steps on a toy and realizes it's because Clark wanted to have kids, which comes up in this because I like it because it's
Mhm.
like the physiology doesn't work, and it's like, yeah, of course it doesn't work,
Mhm.
right? Like as I said earlier, he breathes the wrong way. You've got
Yeah.
crushed lungs, right? Like he's like you have a snapped clavicle. Like it's just that's his world.
Mhm.
And watching Lex go through all those things is so much fun. But then watching this, I was reminded of how much fun it is. And it's also one of the reasons why Lex in a lot of stories ends up hating Superman even
Yeah.
more,
Mhm.
is because he feels like he's been lied to. And that's something that Lex cannot suffer as fools and people making him look like or feel like a fool.
Yes.
And the idea that throughout this, Clark is saving his life the whole time and talking about, like, and he's talking about how he's better than Superman,
Mhm.
and yet he's saving him the whole time. And I'm just like, fuck, I love those are awesome moments to watch
Like
because the hubris of Luthor.
Mhm.
the like who is it? Parasite that's trying to get him in
Yeah.
the prison. Like that
Yes.
sequence is very interesting in both media.
Mhm.
Like I think those are well done. I think both instances of Lex being like, "Oh, we're all in this together," and him in like when his 24 hours runs out and he comes to all those realizations. I think both of those things are done well. I think
Mhm.
it's just if this movie wanted to be shorter, probably should have focused on that and
Yeah.
not and on
Yeah.
all the other stuff.
See,
Yeah, well, and in the comic, they missed out on that moment of like when Clark dies,
Mhm.
right, and then he comes back to mess with Lex with the gravity gun.
Mhm.
Like there's in the comic, there's that whole sequence with Jor-El and stuff, and they're having a conversation. That would have been great in the movie
That should have been in the movie for
Mhm.
sure.
because I just think that's a really key moment. Also, I think it's key because you hinted at it at the beginning. We never end up talking about it. We're not going to, but one of my problems with Man of Steel is how they just totally Snyder misreads the entire legacy and mythos of Superman's universe and characters.
Yeah.
You know, like Jor-El wants the best for his son.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Kent wants the best for his son. And he tries to live up to both of those things, which again, of course, is Clark and Kal-El. And,
Yeah.
you know, and it would have been great in this, you know, because they at least they give Pa a moment when they, you know, when he goes to his grave site.
Mhm.
You know, at least you have that in there, but there's nothing really with Jor-El.
Mhm.
You would think that in his last days he would want to like think or represent or contemplate
Yeah.
his Kryptonian heritage. I know there's the Kryptonians that are in this, and that's just I
Yeah,
never
but they
really
just
like that in
feel
the
so
comics.
weird and removed from it. Like because I think in the comic they even do the thing where he's back in Smallville and it's like the future version of him that wraps up his face. I don't think that's in the movie, but like
No.
anytime they like actually engage with like the Kryptonian part of him, I feel like that's interesting in the comic and in other media, and this movie kind of doesn't want to do that for some reason. And I get it, it's less than 80 minutes long, but I think that's why it probably needed to be more laser focused at that, because now to me feels like they're just trying to get the greatest hits in for some arbitrary reason under 80 minutes.
So, I mean, I took that very differently. Like, so obviously there was a reason why I was like, this is brand new to me because I didn't realize it was a 12 issue run in the comic. You know, that had deeper, obviously that's the case, but like I didn't realize that, and this movie makes me want to see that. When I'm watching this movie, I agree with the ping ponging 100%. But to me, the idea of the premise of the movie is like, okay, this is what the final year of life is going to be like. And unfortunately, I've dealt with death a lot in my life. To see how people are like, yeah, this is just random ping ponging until we get to the end. And with the comments of like Jor-El and all that kind of stuff, I'm like, from what I've seen with people in their final moments, they're more worried about the future than they are with the past. And that to me was reflected with Superman's invention that he shows Lois to be like, I can talk to future, I'm still working out the bugs and all that kind of stuff. So he's trying to secure the future and the safety of everything, like a parent would upon their deathbed. It's like, are my finances in order for my family and all that kind of stuff? He's just taking it upon the world. So that to me was like, I thought a part of this to be like, this is what it's like to continue needing, because the thing he says to Lois too is like, well, the mission's not over just because I'm dying.
Yeah.
Like,
And
we still got to do
clear, the Jor-El thing doesn't go against what you're saying. It is him being like basically told by Jor-El, like, yeah, you're dead now, just stay with me, and him being like, no, I got to keep going. Like this, I'm not staying with you.
He gives him a choice.
Yeah.
So it doesn't. Here.
I'm not saying it needs to be there. I liked it in there, but it also still goes along with everything you saw this movie trying to do,
right?
And gives it more texture.
So it just expands on that more.
Yeah,
because I totally agree with you, Ben, because like there is no point in looking back with regret. You can look back to learn lessons and and apply that to the future. I think that's the best way to look in the rearview mirror. But otherwise, you're right. Like most people would think about, oh shit, did I, it's why the old joke about did I turn the stove off? Did I close my windows? These are the things. And there's a part to be said that I would have liked a moment towards the end where Superman says that. Yeah. Just like
it's a nice parting gift.
Just be like, it's just something random, like, oh, I forgot to take crypto out.
Yeah.
Just something
he thought of all the big things and he missed that one small thing.
Yeah. And that, at least again, in this movie, they do get a moment with him and Ma, and I was like, there, at least that's in there too.
Yes.
And I thought those are the things that I think are super important. Like you guys have both mentioned this, is like, it's important for him to go back to the people that matter to him.
Yeah.
And he's doing those things, but to your point, Ben, I think like one of those great moments is what he, when he leaves with Kandor to take it to the planet that he finds, that he's going to let them live there. And they're and you can see in the bottle, like they're celebrating, the fireworks are going off while he's talking to Lois. And I'm like, yeah, man, that's like, yeah. Cause he's taken care of Kandor this whole time. And that's a responsibility. It's another link in the chain of responsibility that he's got. What do you do with that? Who's going to take care of Kandor? Right. So take it to a planet, let them be on their own, and let them, however they live. Right. And I think that's, like those are super cool moments. But on the negative side of things, I think, yes, I can agree with what some of you, what you're saying, Daniel, about like, on the negative side, some of that stuff is a little too short.
Yep.
Could have been, meted out a little bit better or differently and make it feel a little bit better. But if you, to your point, if you're not really vibing with Superman, then you're just this is not your movie, right? Like
and that's what I'm saying. I don't want this to come off like me saying this is an objectively bad movie. I'm just not the target audience for it.
Yeah. No, and that's fair. Like, I will admit, I am a mark for Superman. Like I have loved the character since I was like 5 years old. So I am beyond biased.
That's fair. Yeah.
But I think that also comes with like, you love it so much, and the fact that you still like the movie does speak to a quality there, because obviously I don't love everything that has Batman in it. Like I can be very persnickety about like how you have to portray him or what I want to see. So I do think that there might be some bias there, but that can always very quickly lean the other way.
I look at it this way. A lot of I started our conversation with, right, about just love what you love. I look at the things that I love now, like Superman, to me is like pizza.
Yeah.
And the old adage, there's no such thing as bad pizza.
Yeah.
The only bad pizza is no pizza.
Yes, right. It's true.
Right. And for me, that's pretty much how I feel about Superman, except for Man of Steel, which is just objectively terrible. But to be fair, yes, there are going to be things that even as a super biased lover of the character, there are things like in the comics, in animation, in live performances, that I'm not a massive fan of. Like the old George Reeves serials, like from the TV show of Superman, that is what it is. That's fine.
It's there for people to like if they want to.
If you grew up on that and you liked it, that's cool. That's not my Superman.
Yeah.
Right? Like my Superman doesn't leap over tall buildings. He fucking flies at Mach 20, right? Like it's just, that's my Superman. But for me, some people have George Reeves Superman TV show. For me, it's Christopher Reeves film. That is the bar, right?
Yeah, and as I said, I feel like when they're casting, in general, it feels like they're chasing the Christopher Reeve appeal.
Yeah,
dude, honestly, I feel bad for every single actor who ever plays the character, because the bar was literally set at a height that nobody can reach.
Right.
And that's not fair. Whereas conversely, Batman, the perfect Batman came out decades after anybody's touched the character, and of course, going back to it, I don't know if I've ever said it to you guys before, but it's always number one Batman forever and a day is Kevin Conroy. Done.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no question.
He's the voice of Batman.
Yeah. He's the voice of Batman. He is the persona of Batman. He is the characterization of Batman. He is everything Batman, and he has played Batman in live action, so everybody can eat it.
Yeah,
he technically has. You're right. Yeah,
he was in one of the
CW stuff, right?
Yeah. For like 5 seconds. Yeah. But my point though is
he the Kingdom Come Batman?
Yes.
Think so. Yes.
Well, it's a version. Yeah. He's wearing the kind of Kingdom Come outfit and everything because he's had his back broken and all that, whatever, right? But my point though is, yes, but but Christopher Reeve came in and set the bar so high that it's like, and I saw the trailer for the new film today, the new trailer that came out, and which we got to see like him actually doing stuff on screen, which was got me excited. So I'm really looking forward to that. But I still feel for Corn and Sweat because I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know how you're going to come over across that hurdle. Like, it's a tall hurdle. This is it is literally a building he has to leap over. So, but so going back to this, it is a movie that is not perfect.
No.
But as a Uber fan, to your point, Daniel, as an Uber fan, I found moments where I just gravitated towards it and just went, that's what I remember about this character that I love. That's what I remember about that character that I love. Lex is the right Lex.
Yes.
Right. He's not goofy. He is still maniacal and a super genius and overthinking things and missing the point.
Yeah, definitely missing the point. Now, I mistaken. I meant to rewatch it a third time after reading the comic, but I didn't. But in the movie, they added the bit where he gave Lois Lane the ability to make a new Superman, right? Like, that's not in the comic. I feel like the comic just ends.
No, so in the comic it ends with I think it's Quintum. He goes to a part of his lab or whatever, and then on the door is the Superman crest, but it says 2.
Yeah, like,
and it's kind of
do it, but it's not like a, because I think that's what I didn't like about the movie representation is it seemed like it was Lex being like, oh no, like he's right, I could have fixed things, but I didn't because I was too angry. And then he's like, here's how I can fix it, and I'm like, I don't want that. I just want him to be like defeated.
Yeah, so that's not in the comic stuff.
I don't remember
it's
reading
not
the comics and seeing him give her.
The
movie is very much like, hey, here you go. Like, this is his DNA. You can do what you need to do.
They skip a point because, like, the one thing I liked about the story is this idea that he's up, like, literally like Atlas in the middle of the sun, holding it all together.
Yes, but I feel like the comic keeps, or at least for me, keeps that intact. That Lois is like, he's not dead yet. Like, he's not dead. I know he's coming. And I feel like she says it in the movie, but then when you add the element of someone being like, but you can just make a new one to her face, it undercuts her hope that he'll be. Or
it doesn't
think it was sent to her face.
It's not. It's Luthor to Quintum.
Yeah, it's not to her
in the movie. Okay.
Yeah, in the movie it's Luthor to Quintum because Luthor says, "Oh, when I had the vision, I looked in and here's the DNA. This is what you need to do to fix them."
Yeah.
But he ends it with, "But you'll need a human woman's
ovum." That's
ovum.
why I'm associating it with her.
Yeah. And so that's the obvious like linkage, right? But and Quintum leaves thinking positively. Her last moment, yes, is her saying that no, he's not gone, he's alive, and then it cuts to that shot of the sun and him inside of it, but you're not sure if it's her version of what he is inside of the sun doing, or if it's actually what he's really doing. You know what I mean? And I like that kind of ambiguity
I like that being
to it.
left up to interpretation.
Yeah, because it's like, because that's where it gives it that kind of Atlas moment where he's like, he's up there moving the gears of the sun, you know, as if it's a machine, right? And I was like, I really like that kind of metaphor and idea that the sun is a machine and it's doing this thing, and he's there basically just because really what he's doing is just sitting in the middle of it. He's kind of like Loki in the at the end of Loki season 2, where he's like he's in
he
the
can't
new tree.
Really leave then.
No,
like, no, I gotta be here.
Because he says he turns into pure energy, right? So my assumption is that energy is just trapped in there. He can't just ever leave. Like the Loki thing, he's holding it all together.
Yeah, like what I would think on a, you know, I'm going to put my nerd hat on here. What I would think is that when he flew into the sun and he got to the core, he became the new core.
Yeah,
and so he basically just is just a ball, like literally been a ball of energy. That's how I interpreted it. A ball of energy just powering the sun. But of course, how do you represent that to people, like normal people? Right? People who don't think about metaphors or anything like that. So you give them a metaphor of him moving a gear or something. It looks like that. And it's like, oh, okay, we get it.
And it works pretty good. The imagery is really, really good. And I like that ambiguity of like, is it her saying that or is it him hearing the thing? Like there's a lot there that's really, really fun to be like, this is a good point, but also still, he's gone right now. You know, it's you know, it's a big thing. Yeah, it's awesome.
And I love because they do bring it back because at the end there where she's in the park and Jimmy comes up to talk to her and they have that conversation. The Superman statue with him with his arm out and the eagle on it, which is going back into comics, you know, like the Alan Moore story for when they switched Crises and stuff like that, and they switched over and into John Byrne's run. That kind of stuff I like bringing in those elements. You know, it's kind of the fun thing. Same thing, even with the design, like of the gravity gun and the Phantom Zone and all that stuff, kind of harkening back to like the Golden Age Superman, because that was the whole premise of the original comic, was to originally was to tell a Superman story that was out of time. So it's all of the aspects of Superman in one simultaneously, and that's a really great idea, but it was turned down, and then it morphed over a couple of years, morphed into what eventually became All-Star Superman. And you can still see the elements of that stuff in there, like the Golden Age goofiness and the some of the Silver Age stuff, and then the Reeves stuff, and then the modern comic stuff, and then just like it's all kind of mishmashing around. And there's some of that in the movie. It's just you know, like it's, unless you read about it, you're not going to get all that. Or you're a huge Superman fan like I am and are into that stuff. You're not going to, the average fan isn't going to pick up on that. You're just going to be like, oh, it's kind of an interesting story. You know, it was weird that they had like the guns looked weird, or, you know, whatever, right? Like they looked really goofy because like the gravity gun looks stupid. Like I'm not gonna lie, it's a dumb looking gun.
But I do think my immediate reaction was like, well, that's a nice thing for Golden Age fans. Like,
good little Easter egg for them for sure. Yeah,
like it's just like you have some stuff with it, and that's super cool. Like, even like the way that Dr. Quintum and his assistant, I forget her name now.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. Anyways, like
the project team.
Yeah, Lilo. No, sorry. Lilo is with Bar-El. Those are the Kryptonians.
Right. Those were like the angry Kryptonians that were like, we know you're related to us. Leave us alone.
Yeah, which that is got a Golden Age Kryptonian kind of vibe because of the way their outfits are and stuff like that. You know, like there's all that kind of stuff in there. But Quintum has his little assistant that, and the way they're designed and their look is, you know, like there's some of that Golden Age stuff, and then there's, you know, like it's just mishmash all over the place. But yeah, I'm sorry, Daniel. I feel bad.
You don't have to feel bad
that you watch this and then it's like you didn't get the same love out of I got out of it. You know,
as I said, it forced me to read the comic, which I enjoyed. So this is
at least
it's a net positive.
That's cool though, because you've read the comic. I think that's cool. Like I think Ben, like you said, you haven't read it.
I haven't seen this, read this at all, and this like it just, and my bias is against Superman, largely because of what you said, like bad writers, right? The power fantasy thing. And I'm over power fantasy. I play video games for power fantasy. I don't read stuff for power fantasy.
And you're not 12.
Yeah, and I'm not 12, right? So the idea of Superman, you're right, very, very right, being poorly written. This is such good writing because to me, this is all about the psychology of Superman and Lex and showing you how they are actually the same person. And to me, like, Daniel knows this. I'm such a geek about psychology now that I'm like, oh, okay, like he can't grasp why this is. And I'm like, there's like attachment theory stuff that we can bring up, but I didn't finish the book yet, but like, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, this is the really, really cool part, is to see how so many people are operating from fundamentally the same place, but the choices they make based on fear and all those other beliefs is what shapes them, right? Because man, that line of what Superman says is like, yeah, you could have saved the Earth like years ago. It was never about that. It was about your ego and being better than me. That's really what it was. And that's why I love that scene where Lex is on trial and they deliver the verdict and all that kind of stuff. Because I'm like, that's the best psychological profiling of what Lex is he's deeply insecure. So the idea of him not understanding how Superman can be vulnerable, perplexing him, breaking his codes, and all that kind of stuff. And then when he finally gets to that end, because we've talked a lot around Lex in that end moment where he's like, I finally get it now. It's just like the greatest thing ever. I'm like, yeah, this is really good psychology within these characters. And I loved it. It was great. The whole Lex thing at the end, we need to talk about that a little bit more. Because when he just sees like, I see it from his perspective now. We're all tied together. It's like the most beautiful thing. And I think, like, for me personally too, like being a teenager, being like, oh, lone wolf, lone ranger, and all that kind of stuff, and now being like, okay, grown up, no, we're all in this together. None of us is lone wolfing and all that kind of stuff. That's how we all die off and whatever. But it's just to see that in Lex's thing. And Daniel, I do agree with you. It's weak to really hold our hands to be like, oh yeah, Lex, all this kind of stuff. What you said with the comic and how they ended it, I'm like, yeah, that would have been way better because it was too handholdy there. That's the one comment.
I mean, I agree, and I guess maybe I was sensitive to that because we talked about it with The Last of Us, so I wanted to give examples of times where I do think the handholding doesn't need to be there, but overall, it didn't make or break the movie for me. It was more just like, as a whole, not really vibing with it, and then reading the comic and vibing with it, and then so being like, there's just something here in the execution of the movie that's not working for me.
Yeah,
this second time around.
So just to be clear, then, Daniel, because maybe I was misunderstanding you earlier. So even though you don't vibe with Superman generally, would that be a fair statement?
I think there are good stories to be told as Superman, and I like the idea of him. So when I say he's not my guy, it's just like, I would say, like, I'll watch anything with Batman. Like, I don't think those Crisis movies are good movies at all, but I was like, Batman's in it. There's Batman family stuff in it, so yeah, like, whatever. Or like, when I suffered through watching Gotham, I'm like, it's still Batman related. Like, this is not good, but I'm still gonna suffer through it. Versus with Superman, I'm like, it needs to be something that I actually feel strongly about, which it would be the comic version of All-Star Superman. And I've read some other not recent, but like things that were brought up around the time James Gunn said he was doing the Superman movie. I think it's called like Up and Away or something like that, or Up in the Air. I can't remember, but like he had a list of a bunch of comics that influenced it that I enjoyed reading. And so then I was like, and obviously he used the All-Star Superman comic book cover to announce Superman. And I was like, that's the one I haven't read yet. And so revisiting this movie, I'm like, I should just read the comic. Like, obviously it's important to people for a reason. And I was like, yeah, I like the comic. I enjoyed the experience of reading it, but the movie just didn't work for me.
No, and that is completely obviously fair and understandable. And I wanted to be sure I was clear on what you were saying. Because so you really liked the comic, not the movie, obviously. We know that part.
Yeah.
But you did dig the comic, even though it was a Superman that you don't know, like Superman's
And
not
I
character
like Christopher Reeve's first Superman movie, and I think I like the Donner cut of Superman too, because we watched the like, it's like Richard something else. Like he's another.
Oh,
is it an L or something like that?
No, it's less. Yeah, it's Lester, but I don't think it was. Was it Richard? It's been
Dick
a while.
Lester. I feel like it's like Dick or Richard Lester. I like when we watched part 2 with the theatrical cut. I was like, huh, I don't like.
Yeah, it
this
is
as
Richard
much as,
Lester.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I don't like this as much as when I saw the Donner, because I saw the Donner cut of part 2 first, and remember liking that.
Oh, well,
And then
see, there you go.
When I saw the Lester cut, I was like, huh, I don't really like this as much.
See, I grew up on the Lester version, like the goofy comedy, stuff, and then I didn't see the Donner cut until like whatever that was when it came out, like 08 or something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, to be clear, that's when I saw it. But like I watched the original Superman and liked it. So it's not that Superman is somebody that I see and I'm like, I'm not gonna like it. It's just more, I'm not gonna be guaranteed to find something to like just because it's him.
Well, and going back to that point, it's like for me, both those two movies, especially the original trilogy, Star Wars, like all those things, like these are movies that I cannot get away from my bias because they were so part of my formative years, right? I'm not joking. Like I saw Superman when I was 5 years old, right? And I saw Star Wars. I used to watch Star Wars Scrambled on First Choice. This is before your guys' time, but like I used to do it. I would listen to it, and they would have two scenes in the movie. Luke looking over at the Dune Sea at the sunset, when the droids are running away, and then at the end in the trench run. The only two moments, and they were in black and white on top of that because of the way the scrambled work. And I would just sit there and listen to the entire movie because I loved it so much. And so these things, like I cannot, like I love every Star Wars TV show and movie. I love everything about Superman. There are some exceptions in both cases, but like that's the way the world works, right? And it's unfortunate, but I think that's a big part of all of our, like you loving Batman, me loving these things. Like Ben, what I'm not sure, like whatever your number one thing.
My number one, I don't even know. Well, my number one thing would have been Star Wars.
Yeah,
but lately, the fans have just turned me off of even trying to engage with it. Not that I interact with. Yeah, they're the absolute worst, and I'm just not that I'm interacting with them, but it's just that algorithmically it's gonna pop up under my YouTube videos and all, and I'm like, I don't want to get this rage bait in my feed and all that kind of stuff. It would have been that, but my thing is very interesting because I'm actively recognizing, like, I mean, a few years ago when we first did Daredevil, I was very much like, yeah, I don't get Daredevil. And very much like I don't get Superman. And then now this year I've been like, no, I'm on to Daredevil. I'm on to Superman now because I'm seeing different things. And it goes to the idea of, and I have this belief that like every 5 years revisit something that you didn't like previously to see where you're at. And it's hitting home now. Obviously the idea of what Superman's going through in this, like, okay, yeah, the idea of death and what's important to him. I'm like, yeah, that's really, really cool. But previously it's always, he's gonna punch something, he's gonna give a small little talk, and then everything goes back to normal, and then Lois still doesn't know he's super. Like I like the fact that in this there was that moment of like, oh, you do a really good Clark Kent impression, and like she still doesn't believe it till the end of the movie where it's really, really good stuff. And I think Reeves does, to your point, to when you pointed it out, I'm like, yeah, his physical acting does portray that the best, of like why you wouldn't believe that Superman is Clark Kent and why Clark Kent wouldn't be Superman. It's two different people altogether, right?
I love Henry Cavill as the idea of Henry Cavill as Superman.
Yes,
but the execution,
terrible Clark Kent, terrible,
sucked. And then like I cannot believe that those two guys are different people.
Yeah,
because all he does is he did and I blame Snyder more than I blame Cavill
100%
for doing the bumbling Clark.
Yes.
And I'm like, it's more. You got to do more.
Like before Man of Steel ended, I was like, oh, they're good. They're not going to do the stupid Secret Identity, and then they still did it. I was like, oh, I don't know how you're going to pull it off, and then they never did.
Yeah, they never even did it. But like here, I think the great thing about it too is like you even have that scene with Superman interviewing Lex in the prison, and how he's putting it on full display, and how even he tricks Lex in there, because it's the idea of like Lex does his psychological breakdown of what Clark is like. I've always liked you. You're this, this, and this, and lists off every like characteristic opposite of Superman. So I'm like, this is really, really good in the sense where even throughout that whole sequence, I'm like, he's still having to do Superman things while hiding it, and convincingly, very convincingly. Like the idea of like, oh my god, an earthquake was really, really funny to me, but but it was really, really well done. And it's just like, yeah, this is great Superman stuff when he's not able to just put on the cape, and when he does put on the cape, it's just like, okay, save the guards. That was his priority, and then he goes immediately back to like, how do I finagle this situation? So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, no, I will say that that the earthquake, as much as I laughed about it again, is the cheesiest moment of that, because it's so ridiculous to say that.
And I think in the movie, this might have just been me not fully paying. I was like, I don't think I remembered that Parasite was feeding off of Superman's energy, like, because in the comic, I feel like it's just made more, or I'm forced to focus more and be like, oh, that's what's happening. So I liked when in the movie, I liked that when Lex is shooting, he's like, stop, the energy from the bullets. You're gonna make Parasite get bigger. And I was like, would that? But then I was like, it's Superman. That's what's making him get bigger and stronger. But I did like that tweak in the movie version.
Yeah, I did like in the movie too that they and I think, because I think it's in the comic, they do the same kind of visual representation. Because like the best thing I always see about like what they do with Parasite, I think is the best, is when you see things through his eyes, and you see how Superman is like literally a glowing sun of energy next to like these little pinprick stars of the human condition, and then I'm like, oh, okay, you can see why he's attracted to that guy. But to your point, Ben, this is where I think you have a villain in Parasite is a great Superman villain, because of the fact that he can't, the closer he gets, the worse it is. It's the same thing with Amazo. Amazo is a great villain inside of the comics for superheroes, because of the fact that Amazo can steal your powers and replicate them just by watching you. And I think that's a super cool thing to do, right? Because it's like that's Taskmaster's power in Marvel, but amped up to the nth degree, because he could literally steal Speed Force and Superman's strength and like all those things, right? Which is like, when you think about it, it's like, well, it doesn't make any sense. Right? Like, how is this android doing that thing, right? At least with Parasite, you can go, okay, I can equate that to a leech or some other kind of organism. Like, you can suck the life out of a creature, okay. There's some things in there that still work. But yeah, like, again, back to Daniel's point about how he didn't really love the film, is like, I can see where you're coming from, and and same thing with you, Ben. I totally agree with you. There are moments in this film that are on the deeper levels, make it totally awesome and worth it. It's it is the biggest problem, I would say, is because of the runtime, that they didn't give enough life into it to breathe and just like be its own thing. And
one of the things what I'm thinking right now is, based on how much I love this and how incomplete this is, like, the next thing I'm thinking, I'm like, man, I gotta read the 12 episode issue run. Like, I got to at this point, based on what the both of you are saying. So this to me was like a teaser, so to speak, of like what's to come. It's kind of how I think about the Harry Potter movies. Is like, okay, yeah, you got a 2-hour movie, you got 700-page book. Like, there's going to be lore there that's missing, right? So yeah, this is it. I've got to read the 12 issues for sure.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is and this, I think this hits on your point as well, Daniel. But like, and I bet it's like your complaints, Daniel, and Ben's love of the movie. I think the best thing, and this goes with any character, but Superman especially, which is why Snyder missed the point. The best versions of any character, superhero or not, if you're translating it from another medium, themes. You got to get the key themes, man. Yeah. If you get the vibe and the feeling of who these characters are, and I think this movie gets really close to that with getting a lot of that in there, but just, it is a little clunky because of the short running time and everything like that. But I think it does keep in a lot of the core themes and elements that are what makes Superman like the great Superman stories great are there. Again, it's didn't work for Daniel, and that's fair.
Yep.
There's,
as they said, still feels like a net positive because at least it finally got
because you read the book.
Yeah.
And Ben looks like he's about to do it.
It didn't make me not want to read the book. I wasn't like, ugh, I'm never touching this story. And I was like, let me see the version everyone likes.
And what I'll add on one little bit for you, Daniel, because now you have read it, you can freely read this little element. And Ben, I would say when you hear this,
yes,
wait until after you read the book to read this about this story, about the cover of issue 1. It's Superman sitting on a cloud over Metropolis, where that inspiration came from, because it has everything to do with Grant Morrison and the thing that led to that, the inspiration for that cover is also the inspiration for the book.
Got it. Okay.
And but Daniel can go and read this now. Ben, wait till afterwards. Sure. Just because I don't want you to kind of like add in some extra mythos or like some layers of whatever. But it's for you, Daniel. It's look up this Grant Morrison All-Star Superman cover story, and it's not a very long one. It was in his book. He tells the story as well, a different version of the story, but it's the same basic thing. But it has to do with a person that he met once. And it's just a fun, and if you know Grant Morrison in any level, you hear the story, and every time I hear bits of the story, I start laughing because I can imagine Grant Morrison telling the story and how just ridiculous that he would tell it, because he believes everything is magic. So if you didn't know this about Grant Morrison, he believes in magic. I mean, like, really believes in it. Not the way that Alan Moore does, but like, because that's just weird. But Morrison's version of magic is the most beautiful explanation in the entire universe, which is, do you know what magic is? And you go, no. And he's like, so magic is that you work really, really hard, and you think really, really, really hard, and then you write out your idea, and then you have a comic book. Magic.
Okay, there you go.
I shit you not, man. This is, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but it's like, that is literally like how he thinks. Like, it is. And when you put that, knowing that, I found everything I've ever read by Grant Morrison to just, I get it. I accept
that is,
and
kind of a nice key to his thought process, for sure.
Because if you read any of his work with that idea in your mind, you go, I get. No matter how weird the story is, you go, okay, fair play,
right, guys. It's time.
For us
to rate this movie.
Yes,
we are gonna. And James, you're gonna go first out of 10, as you remember. And I'd love to hear what you'd give this movie out of 10.
Okay, so I am going to say out of 10, I'm gonna go 7-9.
Nice.
I think 7-9 is a good number. It's because like it gives you lots of room for to go above it for other things that I think are better, but still high enough to imply that it has some quality to it. So yeah, I would sit with a 7-9 on it.
All right, going against our rules, but I like it.
Why am I going against your rule?
No,
because I'm doing 0.9?
Yeah, you said 7.9. You got to go either 7.5 or commit to the 8. I'm joking, though. 7.9
intervals of 5.
You know what I say to that?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm too old
Ben-
for this shit.
That's fair. That's fair.
Ben, how about you?
I've got this at an 8.5.
Wow, nice.
I really enjoyed this. I really
That's
enjoyed the
awesome.
psychology of it. I love the fact that although an imperfect movie, the promise of more expanded lore with the 12 issue run is the exciting thing to me. So I'm willing to forgo a lot of the bumpiness for the fact that okay, I could get to explore this in long format on my pace. So it's 8.5 for me.
Excellent. I'm giving it a 5.5. It does not feel like a complete thought.
Mhm.
And I enjoyed the comic, which I would probably give a 7.7. There we go.
Nice.
See, I like it, Daniel. I like
Island.
it. Coming over to my island. That's what we like to say here. Ben, the other thing too is the specific art style of the movie
Yeah.
is well, it's amped even higher in the comic because that's Frank Quietly's style. Is a very
I'm looking at the
artwork.
the cover of All-Star Superman 1, the one that you're talking about right now, and I'm like, yeah, that's not my jam. I don't like that. So but at the same time, I'm like, I'm willing to be like, all right, I grew up with Dragon Ball, so the expectations were pretty high.
You gotta always with comics is to always what I'll say. I tell people all the time when I want to read a comic and they say, oh, I don't like this art or whatever, it's like, yeah, but it's still about a story.
Yes.
Right, because comics are both a writer and an artist, and obviously an inker and colorist and all those wonderful people, but the two big elements is always going to be the story itself and the visual story that's told by the artist. Either one can suck,
yes,
but if they both do, that's a no good situation.
Yeah.
So the writing is good in this. You clearly are already like, I don't know if I like the art, and I get that. That's why I bring it up.
Yeah.
So just it's worth it though.
Yeah, it's I appreciate that. It's just one of those things where I completely, if the art is not something I love, I'm like, all right, that's like a ice cream with a like a sundae ice cream with a cherry on top. I'm like, okay, I just didn't have the cherry. Like I'm there for the story, not there for the art.
I'm gonna have to call it, guys. All right.
That's all right.
I
No worries,
appreciate the Sunday. You know what to call it. James, thank you very much for joining us. I
thank
thoroughly
you.
appreciated it. Do you want to let people know how they can find you, where you're at on online podcasts you're doing, anything you're doing you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really do too much on social media myself anymore, just because it's a cesspool of vile hatred.
Yeah, it's not good.
No, and but you can check out the show that I do with my co-host Andrew, Geek Hard, every Friday nights at 7 p.m. on realityradio101.com. We do a live show where we talk about movies and comics and TV and all those wonderful things. It's also available through geekhardshow.com, which is our website. And the podcast version of the show is available. So if you can't listen to us live on Friday, just take a listen to us on Mondays after 2 p.m. You'll find the episodes. That's all there. Our social stuff is always just search Geek Hard Show on any of the socials. You'll find us. And usually me, if you're looking for me, you'll find me on some things either as JG Green or Mr. JG Green. So you can find me that way. But other than Blue Sky, I don't really do too much on open social media.
Yeah.
Because even my Facebook, I've closed down to just, close friends and family, and just leave it at that. And even that's kind of disappointing me these days. But so just check out the website. We do and the show itself. We do a lot of good things, and we will be talking about Superman this coming summer.
Yes, we will.
Because I will not. I get to pick the movies for the show. Andrew picks the guests for the most part. But we do compromise occasionally when I know that he's going to hate a movie. Like, I know we can't do Jurassic Park this year.
Oh, he's going to hate Jurassic Park.
He doesn't hate Jurassic Park. He just hates the new Jurassic Parks.
Got it.
He
okay.
finds them kind of like, like it's not like the original. So
I guess I didn't watch Dominion, so I don't hate them though. But I haven't seen Dominion.
They're all right. I'm not gonna sit there and say everybody has to watch them. But if you like dinosaurs, go for it, man.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
like
it's all good.
Like.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for listening, everybody. You can find us at the website tdfeverything.com/boldrotten. We are at TDF Spoiled on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and YouTube. Oh boy. You can email us, spoiledpodcast@gmail.com, and we're on all the different podcast platforms. So please rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, and follow. Do all that great stuff. And we'll be back. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.